They pushed the pregnant waitress down the stairs for being slow. A secret billionaire CEO's response stuns everyone. What if a single moment of cruelty could change the course of 3 lives forever? In a small diner on Maple Street, where the coffee was always hot and the apple pie reminded folks of their grandmother's kitchen, 34-year-old Linda wiped down tables with one hand while gently holding her 7-month belly with the other. The morning rush had been particularly demanding, and her swollen feet ached with every step across the worn tile floor. She'd been working double shifts for weeks, saving every penny for the baby who would arrive in just 2 months. Her husband had lost his construction job 3 weeks ago, and Linda's tips were all that stood between them and losing their small apartment. She moved a little slower these days, her body heavy with new life, but her smile never faded when she served customers their morning coffee. Little did she know that this Tuesday morning would test everything she believed about human kindness. Where are you watching from today? Linda had been working at Rosie's Diner for 6 years, and in all that time, she'd never met customers quite like the 3 women who walked in that morning. They wore expensive clothes and carried designer handbags, their manicured nails clicking impatiently against the table as they demanded immediate service. Linda approached their booth with her usual warm smile. Notepad ready, but before she could even greet them, the blonde woman with a sharp haircut snapped her fingers. "We're in a hurry," she announced coldly. "We have a board meeting in 20 minutes, and we need our orders taken now." Linda nodded politely and began taking their complicated coffee orders. Extra hot, no foam, oat milk on the side with specific temperature requirements that would take the kitchen extra time to prepare perfectly. As Linda made her way to the coffee station, she felt a sharp pain shoot through her lower back. She paused, steadying herself against the counter, one hand naturally moving to support her belly. The baby had been particularly active this morning, and Dr. Patterson had warned her about overdoing it, but they needed the money, especially with David still looking for work and the medical bills piling up. When she returned to their table 5 minutes later with their complicated orders, the 3 women were deep in conversation about stock prices and quarterly reports. Linda set down the first cup carefully, but the dark-haired woman immediately tasted it and frowned. "This isn't hot enough," she complained loudly. "I specifically said extra hot." "I'm so sorry," Linda replied gently. "Let me get you a fresh cup right away." She reached for the lukewarm coffee, but the woman pulled it away sharply, causing Linda to stumble slightly. The sudden movement sent another sharp pain through her back, and she had to grip the edge of the table to steady herself. "Are you even listening?" the third woman demanded. "We told you we're in a hurry. This is exactly the kind of slow, incompetent service that's ruining this country." Linda felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment as other customers began to stare. She'd served thousands of people over the years, and she'd always been proud of her careful attention to every order. But today, carrying this precious life inside her, everything seemed to take just a little longer. Linda hurried back to the kitchen as quickly as her swollen feet would allow, asking Joe, the cook, to remake the coffee order with extra attention to temperature. Her hands shook slightly as she waited, and she found herself thinking about her own mother, who had worked as a waitress while pregnant with Linda 40 years ago. "Kindness costs nothing," her mother always said, "but its value is priceless." When Linda returned with the fresh steaming coffee, she moved extra carefully, taking slow, careful steps to make sure everything was perfect. But as she approached their table, she overheard their conversation and froze. "My husband's company is looking to buy properties in this neighborhood," the blonde woman was saying. "Once we tear down these little dumps and put in high-end developments, we'll triple our investment." Rosie's Diner has been here for 30 years, Linda thought to herself, remembering how the elderly owner, Mrs. Chen, had given her this job when she was struggling to make ends meet after high school. This place wasn't just a restaurant. It was where the neighborhood gathered, where lonely seniors came for company, where young families could afford a decent meal. As Linda carefully set down the fresh coffee, the dark-haired woman tasted it again and nodded approvingly. But just as Linda began to relax, thinking the worst was over, the woman noticed a small water spot on her silverware. "This is disgusting," she announced loudly enough for the entire diner to hear. "How can you expect us to eat with dirty utensils?" Linda felt tears prick her eyes, but she kept her composure. "I'll get you clean silverware immediately," she said softly. But as she reached across the table to gather the allegedly dirty utensils, her belly brushed against the edge and she had to adjust her position to reach everything safely. "Oh my God," the blonde woman said with exaggerated disgust. "This is ridiculous. You're too pregnant to do your job properly. Someone this slow and clumsy shouldn't be serving food to people." The words hit Linda like a physical blow, and she felt the baby give a strong kick, as if responding to her stress. Other customers in the diner had stopped eating to watch the scene unfold. Mr. Peterson, who came in every morning for coffee and eggs, looked like he wanted to say something. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. Linda didn't know that sitting quietly in the corner booth, a man in a simple flannel shirt and work boots was watching everything unfold with growing anger. The embarrassment was almost unbearable, but Linda forced herself to focus on the baby growing inside her. Every tip, every smile, every difficult customer brought her closer to holding her child. She gathered the silverware with trembling hands. But as she turned to walk away, the blonde woman stuck out her perfectly pedicured foot. Linda didn't see it coming. Her toe caught the woman's shoe, and suddenly she was falling forward, her pregnant belly leading the way toward the hard tile floor. Time seemed to slow as she twisted desperately, trying to protect her unborn child. But gravity and momentum were stronger than her panicked attempts to right herself. She hit the ground hard, landing on her side with a cry that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent diner. Pain shot through her hip and shoulder. But worse was the terrifying stillness in her belly. The baby had stopped moving. "My baby," she whispered, her hands frantically pressing against her stomach. "Please, please be okay." The three women looked down at her with cold indifference. "Maybe now you'll be more careful," the blonde one said, gathering her purse. "We're leaving. The service here is absolutely unacceptable." They stepped around Linda's body as if she were nothing more than an inconvenience, but they didn't get far. The man in the flannel shirt had risen from his corner booth, and something in his movement made the entire diner hold its breath. He wasn't particularly tall or imposing, but there was a quiet authority in the way he carried himself as he approached the fallen waitress. "Ma'am, don't move," he said gently to Linda, his voice carrying the kind of calm confidence that comes from someone used to being listened to. He knelt beside her, his rough hands carefully supporting her shoulders. "I'm calling an ambulance right now. Just breathe and try to stay still." The three women had stopped at the door, sensing that something had shifted in the room's atmosphere. The man looked up at them with eyes that seemed to see right through their expensive facades. "You're not going anywhere," he said quietly. But there was steel beneath the soft words. "You just attacked a pregnant woman." "Attacked?" The dark-haired woman scoffed. She tripped over her own feet. "We're not responsible for her clumsiness." But her voice wavered slightly, and Linda noticed the man was already on his phone speaking in low, urgent tones. "Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments below." As the ambulance sirens grew closer, Linda felt the baby give a small, reassuring kick, and she closed her eyes in relief, unaware that her life was about to change in ways she never could have imagined. The emergency room doctor's gentle smile was the first sign that everything would be okay. "Your baby is perfectly fine," Dr. Williams assured Linda as she lay on the examination table, David gripping her hand tightly. "But you need to take it easy for the next few days. No more double shifts." The relief that flooded through Linda was so intense that she finally allowed herself to cry. Tears of gratitude, exhaustion, and overwhelming emotion. Meanwhile, back at the diner, the three women discovered they weren't dealing with just any good Samaritan. Detective Morrison arrived within minutes of the 911 call, followed by two patrol officers who had been briefed on the situation. The man in flannel introduced himself simply as James, but when he handed Detective Morrison his business card, the officer's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Ladies," Detective Morrison said, approaching the three women who were now looking significantly less confident, "you're being charged with assault. The entire incident was caught on the diner security cameras, and we have multiple witnesses who saw you deliberately trip a pregnant woman." "This is ridiculous," the blonde woman protested. "Do you know who we are? I'm calling my lawyer." But her confidence cracked when James stepped forward, and she got her first clear look at the quiet man who had come to Linda's aid. James Hammond, CEO of Hammond Industries, was worth more than most small countries' GDP. But he'd built his empire from nothing, starting with a single construction company his grandfather had founded. He still visited job sites, still wore work boots, and still remembered what it felt like to worry about making rent. He'd been having breakfast at Rosie's Diner every Tuesday morning for 3 years, ever since his wife had passed away, and the big house felt too empty. The simple kindness of the staff and the honest comfort food reminded him of his humble beginnings. "I don't make a habit of involving myself in situations like this," James said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of decades of business negotiations. "But I also don't stand by and watch people abuse others." He turned to Detective Morrison. I want to press charges as a witness, and I'm prepared to testify in court if necessary. The three women exchanged panicked glances. They recognized him now. His picture had been on the business section of newspapers more times than they could count. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. But James wasn't finished. He pulled out his phone and made a call that would change Linda's life forever, though she wouldn't learn about it until the next morning. 3 weeks later, Linda stood in the doorway of her new apartment, hardly believing what had happened. The spacious 2-bedroom unit was in a safe neighborhood with excellent schools, and the rent was completely covered by what James had quietly called a victim's compensation fund. David had been offered a foreman position with Hammond Construction, a job that came with full health benefits, and a salary that would let Linda stay home with the baby once it arrived. The three women from that terrible morning had faced consequences that rippled far beyond. The assault charges, the blonde woman's husband's real estate company had lost several major contracts. When word spread about his wife's behavior toward a pregnant waitress, the dark-haired woman had been asked to resign from her position at an investment firm after the security footage went viral on social media. The third woman had quietly paid a large settlement to Linda and taken anger management classes, eventually writing a heartfelt letter of apology that brought tears to Linda's eyes. But the most beautiful change had nothing to do with money or justice. Rosie's Diner had become a symbol of community kindness. Customers began leaving extra-large tips, not just for Linda, but for all the staff. Local businesses started hanging signs that read, "Kindness served here," and the diner's morning rush became a gathering place where neighbors looked out for each other. James still came in every Tuesday morning, but now he often found himself sharing his corner booth with other regular customers. Mrs. Chen, the diner's owner, had framed a photo of Linda holding her healthy baby girl, born exactly 2 months after that frightening day. The picture hung right next to the cash register where Linda's bright smile reminded everyone who entered that kindness and cruelty both have consequences that ripple outward in ways we can't always see. The day Linda brought baby Grace to visit the diner for the first time, James was there with a small wrapped gift, a silver locket that had belonged to his late wife. "Every little girl should have something beautiful to remember how loved she is," he said softly, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Linda often thought about her mother's words. Kindness costs nothing, but its value is priceless. That terrible Tuesday morning had taught her that the opposite was equally true. Cruelty always comes with a price, and sometimes the universe has a way of making sure that price is paid in full. Grace would grow up in a world where she'd learned that standing up for others isn't just right, it's necessary, and that sometimes the most ordinary-looking people carry the most extraordinary hearts. As Linda rocked her daughter to sleep that evening, she whispered the same words her mother had once said to her, knowing that kindness, like love, was a gift meant to be passed from one generation to the next. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales that remind us all of the power of human compassion.